In this video, we're going to take a look at the test scores app from Chapter 3. Again, we have a pretty standard index file for what we've been seeing. It has the one H1 on it, and our script is embedded. We have some CSS formatting, and then we have our testscores.js file. So if you remember this app from Chapter 2, it asks you for 3 test scores, and it printed the average, I believe. This version has been upgraded a little bit, and it's going to use a loop. And it's going to loop, and it's going to continue asking you to enter scores, and the loop is going to continue running unless you stick in a -1. So it's going to test, and if you ever type -1 for a test score, which generally should probably be positive, right? Would you like taking a test and getting a negative score? But that's going to serve as a flag, and if the score is negative, that's going to end the loop. So we're looking for a -1 to end our loop. Otherwise, the person can keep entering scores. So we have a little do while loop for that that's going to be looking at the scores to see if it's time to end the loop. And now we're not limited to 3 test scores. We can do 1 test score, or 3, or 5, or 10, or however many we want. So inside the loop, it's going to ask the user for a test score. It's going to prompt and ask. It's going to parse it as an integer, store it in the variable called score, and all of our variables, our total, our count, and our score was initialized up here. And the default is going to be -1. So if I don't type in a score and I just hit enter, it's going to end the loop. Okay. If the score is greater than 0 and less than 100, meaning it's a valid score, greater than or equal to 0, less than or equal to 100, it's going to take the score, add it to the total, and store it back in total. And if you're looking at that saying, hey, there's a better way, you're probably right. So the shorthand version to write the same thing of adding the total to the score, adding the score to the total and then storing it back here is to say, instead of this, we can say, and click on it, plus equal. That means the exact same thing. So you could see that written either way. Let me change it back. We'll just keep it the way they meant it in the book. And then we're increasing the count by 1 so that we can count the number of scores. And then we're writing to the document using a template literal. We're writing a paragraph. Here's the beginning and here's the end of the paragraph. We're writing the word score, substituting the count. So it's going to number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then printing out the score. And then ending that paragraph. If this didn't pass, so if they enter a score that's not greater than 0 or less than 100, we are going to check to make sure that the score wasn't a -1, because remember, that's our flag, and we need that for out here. So as long as it was anything besides something greater than 0 and less than 100, and it's not a -1, we're going to alert them that it's an error and it needs to be a value from 0 to 100. So we had to make an exception with a little if statement right here to make sure that -1 didn't cause this loop to repeat, because -1 needs to make this loop end. Okay. So we have a working application. Let's run it. Right click, open in my default browser, enter a test score. Notice the -1 is there as the default prompt. I'm going to enter 75. And the nice part about this is I can use my number pad. Do 80, 85, 85. So I'm just typing a number and hitting enter every time. If I choose to end the loop, I can just hit enter without typing a number, and the -1 is already there. That ends the loop. and we see the results. Score 1 was 75. That got printed out in the first iteration of the loop. Score 2, score 3, score 4, score 5. And then at the very end, we're taking the total. Remember, this is one of those accumulator variables. It started out total equals 0, and every time we came through the loop, we added the score to the total. So we have the total score, and we can take the total score and divide by the count of how many times we went through that loop. Remember, we increased the count by 1 each time. And that gives us the average score. And we can print out the average score is, and there it is.